So, hello and welcome back yet again to Beverly of Graustark, our intrepid heroine who faced down a mountain lion question mark. I mean, she didn't really face it down. She just managed to shoot the goat herder. It's an interesting plot line, and I was thinking about it as I was out walking today, and I know it's not even close to probably the same character, but every time I think about Beverly, I want her to be called Little Nell. I don't know, it just seems to fit that whole, turn of the century heroine. It's Little Nell, she's being tied to the railroad tracks. It's not even the same thing, but I don't know. Figured I would share it with you because that was what came into my mind when I was thinking about Beverly. I also found out, thanks to Hazel, and I don't know if I mentioned it, that after the movie version of this was brought out in the, what, 20s maybe? When did film actually start? Anyway, after the movie came out, it sparked a brief craze amongst the women who saw the movie to get the Beverly Bob hairstyle. Evidently, the actress in the movie sported kind of a short hairstyle, and it sparked a little craze. And yeah, so kind of like the Rachel back in the 90s was sparked by Rachel from Friends, which I never had the Rachel because I was never a Friends watcher. Probably a good show, just never to my taste. And so I never had that hairstyle, but I did think that was kind of funny that the whole getting a hairdo just because you see it in a movie or TV show has been around for probably as long as movies and TV shows have been around. So it's good to know that the more things change, the more a lot of things just seem to stay the same. Anyway, we left with Beverly going off to her blankets in a huff because she's decided that she's upset with the goat herder for not taking her cushions. We're just going to roll with it. So let's jump back in to chapter 7 of Beverly of Graustark by George Barr McCutcheon with chapter 7, Some Facts and Fancies. There was a soft, warm, yellow glow to the world when Beverly Calhoun next looked upon it. The sun from his throne in the mountain tops was smiling down upon the valley the night had ravaged while he was on the other side of the earth. The leaves of the trees were a softer green, the white of the rocks and the yellow of the road were of a gentler tint, the brown and green reeds proudly erect once more. The stirring of the mountain men had awakened Aunt Fanny, and she in turn called her mistress from the surprisingly peaceful slumber into which perfect health had sent her not many hours before. At the entrance to the improvised bedchamber stood buckets of water fresh from the spring. "Why, we have very thoughtful chambermaids," remarked Beverly, while Aunt Fanny was putting her hair into presentable shape. "And an energetic cook," she said, as the odor of broiled meat came to her nostrils. "I don't see anything of the beast," said Miss Beverly, said Aunt Fanny. "I've got my suspicions." Aunt Fanny had a sepulchral despair to her voice. "Oh, no, they've thrown that terrible beast into the river," said Beverly. "No, I would assume that they're cooking it," said Aunt Fanny. "Oh, good heavens, no," said Beverly. "Go and see right this minute. I wouldn't eat that cat-like thing for the whole world." Aunt Fanny returned a few minutes later with the assurance that they were roasting goat meat and that the skin of their midnight visitor had been stretched on the ground not far away. "And how is he?" said Beverly, jamming a hatpin through a helpless bunch of violets. "Why, he's been skinned, Your Highness." "I don't mean the animal." "Oh, you mean Mr. Goatman. He's sitting up and chatting as though nothing happened. He said that we should be on our way as soon as you've eaten your breakfast. The horses are all hitched up and—" "Has everybody else eaten? Am I the only one that hasn't?" said Beverly. "Except for me, Your Highness. I'm just as hungry as a poor man's dog, and—" "And he's being kept from the hospital because I'm a lazy, good-for-nothing little—" "Come, Aunt Fanny, we haven't a minute to spare. If he looks very ill, we'll just skip breakfast." But Baldos was the most cheerful man at the party. He was sitting with his back against a tree, his right arm in a sling of woven reeds, his black patch set on the correct eye this day. "You will pardon me for not getting up," he said cheerfully. "But, Your Highness, I am much too awkward this morning to act as befitting a courtier in the presence of his sovereign. Did you sleep well?" "I slept too well, I think. So well, in fact, that you suffered for it. Can we go at once?" She was debating within herself whether it would be good form to shake hands with the reclining hero or not. In the glare of broad daylight, he and his followers looked more ragged and starved than before, but they also appeared picturesque and romantic. "When you have eaten of our humble fare, Your Highness, your last meal here at the Hawk and Raven." "But I'm not hungry at all." "That is very considerate of you, but unreasonable. You must eat before we start off." "I can't bear the thought of your suffering when we should be hurrying to a hospital and competent doctors." He just laughed. "Oh, you needn't laugh," she said. "I know it hurts. You said that we cannot reach Ganlook before tomorrow. Well, we can't stop here a minute longer than we—" "Oh, thank you." A ragged servitor placed a rude bowl of meat and a bit of fruit in front of her. "Sit down, Your Highness, and prepare yourself for a long fast. We might go on until nightfall without food. Game is scarce, and we dare not venture far into the hills." Beverly seated herself at his feet and daintily began the operation of picking a bone with her pretty fingers and teeth. "I'm sorry we have no knives and forks," he told her. "I don't mind," she said, "but I really wish you would remove that black patch." "Alas, I must resume this hated disguise. A chance enemy might recognize me." Your clothes have been mended," she remarked, with a furtive glance at his long legs. The trousers had been rudely sewed up, and no bandages were visible. "Are you are your legs terribly hurt?" "They were badly scratched, but not seriously. The bandages are skillfully placed." He looked at her look of doubt. "Ravone is a genius, you know." "Well, I'll hurry," she told him, blushing deeply. Goat hunter though he was, and she a princess, his eyes gleamed with the joy of her beauty, and his heart thumped with a most unruly admiration. "You were very, very brave last night," she said at last, and her rescuer smiled contentedly. She was not long in finishing the rude but wholesome meal, and then announced her readiness to be along the way. With the authority of a genuine princess, she commanded him to ride inside the coach and gave incomprehensible directions to the driver and escort, and she would listen to none of his protesting. When the clumsy vehicle was again on the highway and bumping over the ridges of flint, the goat hunter was next to his princess on the rear seat, his feet upon the opposite cushions by Aunt Fanny. A well-arranged bridge of boxes and bags gave support for his long legs. "We want to go to a hospital," Beverly had said to the driver, very much as she might have said to a driver in Washington, D.C. She was standing bravely next to the four-wheel, her face flushed and eager. Baldos, from his serene position upon the cushions, watched her with kindling eyes. The grizzled driver grinned and shook his head in despair. "Oh, pshaw," said Beverly. "You don't understand, do you? Hospital. Hospital, she spelled out for him, and he still shook his head. Others in the motley crew were smiling broadly. "Speak to him in your own language, Your Highness, so that he can understand," said Beverly. "I am speaking in I prefer to speak English." "Well, please tell him to go to a hospital," said Beverly. Baldos gave a few jovial instructions, and then the raggedest courtier of them all handed Beverly up into the carriage with a grace that amazed her. "You are the most remarkable goat hunters I've ever seen," she told him. "And you speak the most perfect English I've ever heard," he told her. "Oh, do you really think so? Miss Grimes used to say I was hopeless. I had a tutor," she told him. "Don't you think it's strange that we haven't met any Axphian soldiers?" She changed the subject abruptly. "We are not yet out of the woods." "That was a purely American anachronism," she cried. "Where did you learn your English?" "I had a tutor," he told her. "You're a very odd person," she said, and then she sighed. "I don't believe that you're a goat hunter at all." "If I were not a goat hunter, I would have starved long ago," he told her. "Why do you doubt me?" "Simply because you treat me one moment as though I'm a princess and the next moment as though I was a child. Humble goat hunters do not forget their station in life." "I obviously have much to learn in deference due to a queen." "That is just like the Mikado or Pinafore," she told him. "I believe that you are a comic opera brigand or a pirate chieftain." "I'm a lowly outcast," he told her with a smile. "Well, I've decided to take you into Edelweiss and—" "Pardon me, Your Highness," he told her. "That cannot be. I shall not go to Edelweiss." "But I command you." "It's very kind of you, but I cannot enter a hospital, not even at Ganlook. I may as well confess, I am a hunted man, and the instructions are to take me dead or alive." "Impossible!" she gasped, involuntarily shrinking away from him. "I've wronged no man, and yet I am being hunted down as though I were a beast." His face turned haggard for a moment. "The hills of Graustark, the plateaus of Axphion, and the valleys of Daubergen are alive with men who are bent on ending my unhappy and inconvenient existence. It would be death for me to enter any one of your towns or cities. Even you could not protect me, I fear." "This just sounds like a dream. Oh, dear me, you don't look like a hardened criminal," cried Beverly. "I am the humble leader of a faithful band who will die with me when the time comes. We're not criminals, Your Highness. In return for what service I may have performed for you, I beg you to question me no further. Let me be your slave right up to the walls of Ganlook, and then you can just forget Baldos the goat hunter." "But I can never forget you," she cried. "Will you forget the one who gave you this wound?" She touched his injured arm. "It was a very gentle wound, and I love it so I pray it may never heal." She suddenly looked away. "Tell me one thing," she said, a mist coming to her eyes. "You say that they are hunting you to the death. Then your crime must be a grievous one. Have you killed a man?" she added quickly. He was silent for a long time. "I fear I have killed more than one man." Again, Beverly shrank into the corner of the coach. "History says that your father was a brave soldier and he fought in many battles," he said. "Yes," said Beverly, thinking of her father, the Major George Calhoun. "Well, he killed men, perhaps, the way I killed them." "Oh, my father never killed a man," cried Beverly in horror. "Yet Graustark reveres his mighty prowess on the field of battle," he told her with a cocked eyebrow. "Oh," she murmured, remembering that she was supposed to be the daughter of Yetiv's father. I see. You are not just a mere murderer, then." "No, I have been a soldier, that is all." "Oh, thank heaven," she murmured, and she was no longer afraid of him. Would a pardon be of any especial benefit to you?" she asked, wondering how far her influence might go with Princess Yetiv. "It is beyond your power to help me," he told her gravely. She was silent, but it was the silence of reflection. "Your Highness left the castle 10 days ago," he said, dismissing himself as a subject for conversation. "Have you kept in close contact with Edelweiss during that time?" "I know nothing of what's going on there," she told him truthfully. She only knew that she had sent a message to the Princess Yetiv apprising her of her arrival in St. Petersburg and of her intention to leave for the Graustark capital soon. "Then you do not know that Mr. Lorry is still on the Dawsbergen frontier in conference with representatives from Saros. He may not return for a week or so, so Colonel Quinnox is saying, at least." "That's news to me," murmured Beverly. "You do not seem to be alarmed," said Baldos. "Yet I fancy it is not a dangerous mission, though Prince Gabriel is ready for battle at a moment's notice." "I have the utmost confidence in Mr. Lorry," said Beverly with proper pride. "Baron Dangloss, your Minister of Police, is in the mountains watching the operations of the Axphian scouts and spies." "Is he? You seem very well informed." "Moreover," said Baldos, "the Axphians are planning to attack Ganlook upon the first signal from their ruler. I don't wish to alarm your Highness, but we may expect trouble before we come to the Ganlock gates. You are known to be in the pass, and I am certain an effort will be made to take possession of you." "Oh, they would not dare," she told him. "Uncle Sam would annihilate them in a week." "Uncle Sam? Is he related to your Aunt Fanny? I'm afraid he could do very little against Volga's fighting men," he told her with a smile. "They will soon find out who Uncle Sam is if they touch me," threatened Beverly. He seemed puzzled, but too polite to press her for any more explanation. "But he is a long way off, and he couldn't do much if we were suddenly attacked from an ambush, could he?" "Oh, what would they do to me if I got taken, as you're suggesting?" said Beverly, a bit more concerned than she tried to appear. With you in their hands, your highness, Graustark would be utterly helpless. Volga could demand anything that she wants, and your ministry would be forced to submit. I really think it would be a capital joke on the Princess Volga, said Beverly. Baltos didn't know what she meant, but he regarded her smile as the clear title to the serenity of a princess. She sat back and gave herself over to the contemplations that were likely to grow out of her involuntary deception. The thing that worried her more than all the rest was the fear that Yetive might not actually be an Edelweiss. According to all the reports, she had recently been in St. Petersburg, and the mere fact that she was supposed to be traveling by coach was sufficient proof that she was not back at the capital. Then there was, of course, the possibility of trouble on the road with Axphian scouts, but Beverly enjoyed the optimism of both youth and coming from a civilized country. Baldos, the goat hunter, was dreamily thinking about the beautiful young woman at his side and of the queer freak of fortune that had been played by bringing them together. As he studied her face, he could not but lament that marriage established a barrier between her and the advances that his bold heart might otherwise be willing to risk. His black hair straggled down over his forehead, and his dark eyes, the patch had been surreptitiously lifted, seemed unusually pensive. It is strange that you live in Graustark and have never seen its princess before, said Beverly, laying the groundwork for an enquiry concerning the acts and whereabouts of the real princess. May it please your highness, I have not long lived in Graustark. Besides, it is said that half the people of Ganlook have never seen your face. I'm not surprised. The proportion is smaller than I imagined. I have not visited Ganlook, strange as that might seem to you. One of my company fell in with some of your guards from the Ganlook garrison the day before yesterday. He learned that you were to reach the city in 48 hours, and that a large detachment of men has been sent to meet you at Labat. Oh, really? Said Beverly, seeming very interested. They must have been misinformed as to your route, or your escort decided to take you through by the lower and more hazardous way. It was our luck that you came by the wrong road, though. Otherwise, we would not have met each other. And the lion, he said with a smile. Where is Labat? She said, intent upon the one subject in her mind. In the mountains, many leagues north of this pass. Had you taken that route instead of this one, you would have by this time left Labat for the town of Eros, half a day's journey away from Ganlook. Instead of vagabonds, your escort would have been made up of loyal soldiers, well-fed, well-dressed, and well satisfied with themselves, I'm sure. But no braver or truer than my soldiers of fortune, said Beverly. By the way, are you informed as to the state of affairs in Dahlbergen? Scarcely as well as you must be, your highness. The young prince, what was his name again? She paused. Danton? Yes, that's it. What became of him? I'm terribly interested in him. He's a fugitive, is what they say. They haven't captured him then? Good, I'm so happy. Baldos exhibited little or no interest in this fresh topic. It is strange that you would have forgotten his name, he said tiredly. Oh, but I do so many ridiculous things, complained Beverly, remembering that she was supposed to be a princess. "I've never seen him, you know." "It is not strange, your highness. He was educated in England, and he had but seen little of his own country when he was called to the throne 2 years ago. You remember, of course, that his mother was an Englishwoman, the Lady Ida Falconer?" "I I think I've heard some of his history, a very little bit, to be sure," said Beverly lamely. "Prince Gabriel, his half-brother, is the son of Prince Louis III by his first wife, who was a Polish countess. After her death, when Gabriel was 2, the prince married Lady Ida. Danton is their son. He has a sister, Candace, who is only 19 years of age." "Well, I'm ashamed to say that you just seem to know so much more about my neighbors than I do." "I lived in Dawsbergen for a little while, and I was ever interested in the doings of royalty. It's a poor man's privilege, you know." "Prince Gabriel must be a terrible man," said Beverly, her heart swelling with tender thoughts of the exiled Danton and his little sister. "You have cause to know," he said shortly, and Beverly was perplexed until she recalled the stories of Gabriel's misdemeanors while at the court of Edelweiss. Is is Prince Danton as handsome as they say?" "It is entirely a matter of opinion," said Baltos. "I, for one, do not consider him all that special." The day went on, fatiguing, distressing in its length and all that happened. Progress was necessarily slow, the perils of the road increasing as the little cavalcade wound deeper and deeper into the wilderness. There were times when the coach fairly crawled along the edge of a precipice, a proceeding so hazardous that Beverly shuddered as though cold. Aunt Fanny slept serenely most of the time, and Baldos took to dreaming with his eyes wide open. Contrary to Beverly's expectations, the Axphians did not appear, and if there were robbers in the hills, they must have thought it better than to attack the valorous-looking party. It dawned on her finally that the Axphians were guarding the upper route and not the one that she was traveling over. Yetive, doubtless, was approaching Ganlook over the northern pass, provided the enemy had not been encountered before Labbot had been reached. Beverly found herself fearing for the safety of the princess, a fear which at last became almost unendurable. Near nightfall, they came upon 3 Graustark shepherds, and they learned that Ganlook could not be reached before the next afternoon. The tired, hungry travelers spent the night in a snug little valley through which a rivulet bounded onward to the river below. Their supper was a scant one, the foragers having bad luck on their hunt for food. Daybreak saw them on their way once more. Hunger and dread had worn down on Beverly's supply of good spirits. She was having difficulty in keeping the haggard, distressed look off of her face. Her tender, hopeful eyes were not so bold or merry as on the day before, and being cheerful cost her an effort. She did manage to keep it fairly alive, though. Her escort, wretched and half-starved, never forgot the deference due to their charge, but strode steadily on with the doggedness of martyrs. At times, she wanted to disclose her true identity, but discretion told her that the deception was her best safeguard. Late in the afternoon of the second day, the front axle of the coach snapped in two, and a tedious delay of 2 more hours ensued. Baldos was strangely silent and subdued. It was not until the misfortune came that Beverly observed the flushed condition of his face. Involuntarily, and With the compassion of a true woman, she touched her hand to his brow. He was burning hot. The wounded man was in a high fever. He laughed at her fears, and he scoffed at the prospect of blood poisoning and the 100 other things that suggested themselves to Beverly's anxious brain. "We are close again, look," he said. "Soon you may be relieved of your tiresome, cheerless company, Your Highness." "You are going to go to a physician," she told him, alive and active once more now that the worst part of the journey seemed to be coming to an end. "You tell your man to drive at a gallop for the rest of the way to town." And that is where chapter 7 ends. So, I would say it was probably the bullet wound from Beverly that caused this infection, but honestly, considering the state of a cat's claws in real life, it's probably the cat claws that on the leg. But it sounds like our man Baldos is sick, and we got a little bit more of a lore drop about all of the political intrigue that is going on that, surprisingly, our princess doesn't seem to know much about. I wonder how soon before she gets outed. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you're enjoying this story. I'm kind of enjoying it, as silly as it is. Like, I could see the girls from Pride and Prejudice reading this, which would have been about the same time, because I think Pride and Prejudice was written not too long after this one. So it is entirely possible that it had crossed the ocean and was being enjoyed by all of the girls from Pride and Prejudice, just all the Bennet girls sitting there furtively reading Beverly of Graustark. I could see it. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that chapter, and I will see you Saturday night for the next chapter. Taking Friday off as usual, but I will see you Saturday night, so have an awesome night.